The banners marking Kenya's biggest ever infrastructure project leave no doubt as to the origin of the contractor, China. Anyone looking closer will also see that while Chinese engineers fill many of the supervisory roles, there are also labourers from the Asian giant working alongside their local counterparts to add to the track laid by the British more than a century ago. But while the slogans might come straight out of China's Cultural Revolution, the railway has the full backing of current Premier Li Keqiang, in addition to Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. China's competitors like Japan have little choice but to take note.
In 2 years' time, this will be a triple-track stretch of railway in one of China's most ambitious investment projects in Africa. The 450-kilometre, $5 billion railway from the Indian Ocean port of Mombasa to the Kenyan capital Nairobi is indicative of the scale of China's ambition for Africa and the way it is finally learning to do business on the continent. Unlike projects of 5 to 10 years ago, which were often poorly thought through and hastily implemented, this project is coming in on budget, ahead of schedule, and locals tell us relations between Kenyans and Chinese are good. However, it is still a lot more expensive than many similar projects elsewhere in the world, and so doubts remain as to whether Kenyans really will get value for money from this Chinese investment.
Schemes like the Standard Gauge Railway, to give the track its formal title, or the myriad Chinese construction projects in Nairobi, are likely to transform Kenya. But government officials are aware they not only have to deliver prosperity, but in a way that ensures value for money.
We know there are no free lunches. That's one of the things we learn in economics, no free lunches. But that does not mean, so China has its own interest. They are not doing this purely just for philanthropy or anything else. What is crucial is that as Africa countries, we know the risks, and everybody knows the risk. All we have to do is be better in negotiating and agree on some of how do we partner to have a proper partnership, so that so I believe even though there is a risk, it is a risk that can be managed.
The China-Africa relationship is still evolving. The rate of growth of trade between Beijing and the continent has slowed markedly in recent years. But despite this deceleration, bilateral trade in 2014 totaled $200 billion, more than 7 times that of Japan. The speed with which Chinese companies make their investment decisions, often helped by access to favourable rates of financing from state-owned institutions, is proving crucial.
This is one of the key things that has happened for the world. That the entry of China in the capacity it has come in has made other countries to wake up and start, asking, how can we make decisions faster? How can we find structures, financing structuring that is more suitable to developing countries and other countries that are challenged? So, like anywhere else, competition is important because it makes people to go and become more innovative, to think of better solutions.
No one is learning from this more quickly than Japan. Kenyans for years said only half-jokingly that in contrast to their Chinese counterparts, Japanese companies would do a feasibility study of a feasibility study before deciding whether to invest.
Japan has been a trusted partner of Kenya and many other African countries for decades, both with regard to aid and trade and investment. But in recent years, as China has become more aggressive in Africa, Japan has had to up its game, and this agricultural equipment showroom is a case in point. Toyota opened it 18 months ago in response to demand from the local market, but also because of more aggressive investment from China.
Japanese companies' current projects in Kenya include extending the country's main port in Mombasa and building a major fertilizer factory. And while it is impossible not to compare the more pushy Chinese attitude to Africa with that espoused by nations such as Japan, analysts say such exercises are a little superficial, particularly in Japan's case, and miss a bigger picture.
It's a different style of engagement. It's more targeted. It's less broad-based. They don't necessarily have the same agendas China does with things like Taiwan, where they want everybody's vote on the continent. That's a bunch of votes that they're probably keen on getting. That's why you get that stadium diplomacy, stadiums in every place you care to visit. But I think Japanese more targeted, a much sharper engagement. and I think a determination to differentiate themselves. And just from a political point of view, I suspect the Japanese and Indians will be working much more closely going forward.
What this will mean in terms of investment in Kenya and elsewhere in Africa over the next 5 years remains to be seen. Chinese workers will probably be a common sight on African building projects for the foreseeable future, even though there is growing evidence that not all promised Chinese investment materializes. But Japanese companies are certainly likely to want a sizable chunk of what, if Kenya's expanding economy is anything to go by, is a growing trade pie. John Aglianby, Financial Times, Nairobi.